no warriors of light to save you this time.
There is only one reason we escaped the Howling Eye with our lives, because Baelsar, in his arrogance, allowed it. He meant that night's display to demonstrate to the Alliance the futility of opposition, and he meant for us to deliver this message for him. I will not deny that the power of this Ultima Weapon is incredible. I will not share his flaw in underestimating my foe, but the Alliance leaders will hear nothing of despair and compromise from me. Baelsar has revealed his hand, and with it his one great weakness, and with this knowledge we can destroy him. I have to move faster than Baelsar's engineers can work to mobilize that monster against a city, and find and rescue the surviving Scions to remove the Garlean's single mode of leverage against me. Then it will be a case of discerning where the weapon is held, isolating the castrums with simultaneous assaults that I might pierce the wolf's lair without interruption and run his toy through some concussive quality assurance. Once the 14th leadership is shattered, it will be up to the Grand Companies to kick the yelping dogs back to the 7th hell. As it was, we made it safely back to Uldar and proceeded immediately to reclaim the Waking Sands, where we found that the long-missing Yda and Y'shtola have had similar designs. Neither of them had been present when Livia Junius raided, and when they returned to what later resembled an abattoir, they had to literally sponge the remains of their friends from the floors and walls. They had noticed, as I had, however, that the Imperials knew exactly where to find us, and that Horizon had remained undisturbed. I doubt it will be long before we have to unmask a traitor in our midst. Yda and Y'shtola have also discovered that some of our numbers survived as captives to serve Baelsar's fascination with the Echo, and while I was working in Ethys to find the Enterprise and hunt Garuda, they had already set to narrowing down the location where our comrades were being held. As we waited for Y'shtola to return from her present investigation in Uldar, I set down my axe and rested for what felt like the first time in moons, and finally had a chance to reflect on what had happened to me in the Howling Eye. Firstly, I had compulsively gripped at and torn ether away from the weakening essence of Garuda through some function of the Echo that I do not yet understand, and from the crystal it formed, I realized that I had now poured myself into a pure light crystal of every base element which makes up our world. It was like waking up after a long and chaotic dream. No longer did my senses drift hazily between the world of substance and the ethereal sea. I was here and there at once. I could feel the energy of my friends quietly humming beside me, and as I focused on it, even their swirling emotions. I could feel the flow and ebb of Hydaelyn's stream like a heartbeat, and realized with sadness that it was yet weak and strained, as if in response, she came to me again.
Bringer of light, brave gatherer of the crystals, thy soul burneth bright. I am Hydaelyn, all made one. Hearken unto me now, for the darkness doth begin to spread. Wear thee the bearer of the crimson brand, for he is the avatar of shadow, whom death attendeth always. The crystals shall be thy salvation, thy blade and shield both. Steel thyself, for at the appointed hour But fear not, for I am ever with thee.
Y'shtola was as stunned to see Cid among us as Ida had been, though she hid it well. Pausing not for pleasantries, she revealed that she had learnt where Minfilia and the other captives were held, within the imposing castrum Sentry. Even I could concede that barreling directly into that stronghold would only risk the lives of our imprisoned friends. Now was the time for caution and strategy. Sir Portelaine at the Dicasterial Observatorium would not have missed any Garlean ships travelling in and out of Mordona, and so I decided that our reconnaissance might best begin with what records he could offer us, if only we might identify the best window within the castrum's routine to attempt an infiltration. As fortune would have it, an Imperial airship had just been observed making an emergency landing near the Zemael Darkhold, from which two presumed prisoners, a Rogaden and a Lullafell, had been seen fleeing. My recent mastery in tracking beasts through the Coearthan tundras gave me confidence that I would find our devilish friends before their jailers could, and if I met some shipwrecked Garleans in pursuit, all the better sport. I found Master Wedge frozen half to death and quietly swearing under a bridge. Biggs had separated from him in an attempt to lure their pursuers away. Ida, Y'shtola and I caught him cornered by a squad of Garleans at Danafin Pass. I gladly diced them as carrion for the Biasts and left their vanguards as smoking scrap on the hillside. We set Biggs and Wedge down next to a hearth in Monument Tower, and after their long ordeal, I'm surprised that seeing their master Garlon for the first time in 5 years didn't break them. They told us how they had been bundled onto a ship bound for Garlemald and managed to force an emergency landing through sabotage before slipping away immediately after impact. Once our engineers had sufficiently thawed, we decided to pack up for Revenant's Toll, a small camp on the border of Mordona that has rapidly flourished into a towering settlement thoroughly maintained by adventurers and wily independent merchants. It was as close as we could get to Castrum Sentry in relative safety, and many of its residents spend their days harrying their imperial neighbours at every opportunity. In short, it was an ideal outpost from which to plan our infiltration. Cid's plan was admirably direct. The Masher style of military tactics and etiquette seems to be rubbing off on him. We were to procure imperial uniforms and a borrowed suit of Magitech armour before marching directly into the castrum, freeing the Scions, and presumably smashing and burning our way back out. The local adventurers approved our use of an empty workshop. Ida and Y'shtola set about surveying our targets whilst I broadened our contacts in Revenant's Toll, beginning with an Alamegan escapee named Glomont, who was happy to share with us his uncommon knowledge of the castrum's routines and architecture. He helped me to confirm beyond a doubt that our quarry was still held within. Drainage pipes in the tangle echoed conversations from the command tower above, conversations which reaffirmed both our current intelligence and the fact that our friends were being tortured without rest. If the castrum's plumbing was much larger, I'd have crawled up there and broken some necks. Before we could borrow the Imperial gear we needed, Cid had to construct a kind of makeshift communications jammer, and Glomont thought it proper that I might observe and practice a standard Imperial salute, to make certain that I wasn't going to be too transparent of vaudeville. A bored and wealthy merchant come sell knife named Sark Malark instructed me to pacify and strip enough Imperial scouts to disguise Biggs, Wedge and I in uniform, as if I needed his permission. I made certain that we would have spares aplenty, and the young potato generously had them repaired for us from the crushed, punctured, and bloodied state I had collected them in. Between the conspiring of Glomont and Cid, we were finally prepared to bait our Magitech armour. The Imperials had been fed intelligence to increase the regularity of patrols, and it was a simple thing to lure them, in my flawless disguise, close enough to Revenant's Toll for Cid to jam their comms, and for me to practice some clumsy surgery before their screams could reach the ears of another cohort. Unfortunately, the Reaper's operator didn't know when to quit, and I was forced to substantially downgrade the armour. it may take some time to repair. Time enough at least for me to meditate further on my new awakening and address some unfinished business. Although it has had little bearing on my work with the Adventurers Guild and the Scions, and therefore fallen out of the scope of these reflections, I know that I would sooner rely on my own eyes and arms than the apparent blessing of light when I inexorably face the ancient Ultima Weapon. So it was with the determination to exceed the skills of my mentor as completely as I've already exceeded his physical strength that I returned to Curious Gorge and fully realized my mastery of the ancient martial tradition of the Ablathian warriors. I have decided that once we banish this threat and I have time enough to train freely, I will pursue and champion all of the realm's arts of war, that I might no longer suffer any such gaping weakness of knowledge or instinct. But for now, fully assimilating the body and soul of the axe will have to be enough. Soon, Gaius and I will walk through fire together. One of us will leave as a blade reforged, the man with the strength and resolve to champion this realm, and the other will burn to dust.